last time Ruth had also asked about using the template plastic in the hoop for quilting the heart-to-heart blocks individually, and she was having a little bit of a hard time imagining how that works. So I have a version of that right here. I want to just let you know the piece of stabilizer I have literally taped onto the hoop is purely so that you can see the template plastic. When you're using this technique, it's a way of getting beyond the stabilizer, as in you don't need any stabilizer at all. So the only reason this particular piece of stabilizer is here is to make it easy to see the lines on the plastic. You can see I got the plastic here, and it just made it a little bit easier to see all of the lines. So when you are working with the heart-to-heart blocks and you're quilting the blocks in the hoop, in order to minimize the amount of fabric, I came up with this plan of using a piece of template plastic in the hoop. So the template plastic is literally stuck to the back of my hoop. So I put the template plastic on the table, put the whole hoop with the inside hoop, the inner part of the hoop tight in the outside of the hoop, put the whole hoop on the piece of template plastic and drew around it. And I even drew around the little knobby bit here. I'm not quite sure if you can see that template plastic here. It was a little tiny bit shorter than the hoop, but that's not too big of a deal because I can still tape all the way around. So I used double-sided quilter's tape to hold the template plastic onto the bottom of the hoop. Now, anytime I talk about sticky stuff on hoops, a lot of people get worried about the fact that their hoop is going to get all gummed up. So I have a supply of these guys under my kitchen sink. Scotch-Brite Dobie Stay Clean Scrubbers, or you probably heard of the purple thing that is used as a turning tool. Well, this is the other purple thing that I highly recommend for your studio. It's a sponge on one side, and this other side is remarkable at getting sticky stuff off your pots and pans, and it works wonders at getting sticky stuff off your hoop. So you can use this ever so slightly rough side and just hold your hoop underneath a running tap, warm, not hot water, and just rub on it gently with this. That sticky stuff will be gone in next to no time, and you will have a beautifully clean hoop. So I love those. I have not thread off there. I love those. I have a stash of them under my kitchen sink. So, okay, so you've got your piece of template plastic. You've got it stuck to the back of your hoop. And you're going to have a piece of template plastic for each size of block. Now, let's say you are stitching up. Let me show you a picture here. The heart-to-heart baby quilt can be stitched up a bunch of different ways, and you can stitch it up so that you quilt each block in the hoop and then join the blocks together with sashing. So very much like we're actually quilting Mel's Practical Joy. You're quilting them one by one. Now this baby size quilt has 6-inch finished blocks. Let's say you decide you go all the way down here. There are 3 different ways you can put this together, but let's say you decide I want to make something a bit bigger and use the medium-sized hearts. So these blocks finish up at 7.5 inches square. You're going to trim them to 9 inches, and then they get joined with sashing. Now, you could actually use the brand new technique that we created for Practical Joy to stitch these guys together, but you're going to be quilting them in the hoop. Now, finish size 7.5 inches. We're going to be having a piece of batting that is 10 inches. The trimmed size, 7.5 inches with the sashing, is the trim size is actually going to be 9 inches. We're using a piece of batting that is 10 inches square, and the backing is just a little tiny bit bigger at 10.5. So if you imagine a 10-inch square in this particular hoop, which is a Bernina Maxi hoop, it is 15 inches from here to here. It's 8 and a bit inches across here. I don't actually know, and I've lost my ruler. Oh, we got a tape measure. It's actually the inside measurement of this hoop, and I've never actually done this before, is 9 inches. Pretty much 9 inches inside edge to inside edge for this hoop. So there's no way that you can hoop a 10-inch square in here. So you either have to figure out a smaller hoop, which if you're on a Bernina machine, it's hard luck you don't have one. Or you have to use a giant piece of batting and backing fabric. And I don't necessarily want to do that because that can be very wasteful. So put your piece of template plastic, stick it onto the back of your hoop. The designs for quilting have a basting line around them, which indicate the finished size of the block. And you're going to load the design into the machine. And in the corners, and I'm thinking that you're barely going to be able to see them, in the corners, you're going to put the needle down into this template plastic, and it's literally marking the corners. So there are 4, I think you can see that one there. There are 4 needle holes representing the corners of the designs. Draw a square connecting the dots, then draw another square that is a 1/4 inch bigger, because you want a little bit of a leeway when you're actually quilting the when you're actually doing the quilting. And you also want to draw your vertical and horizontal center line so that you can get everything aligned neatly and accurately. Now, you'll see up here, I've got a dotted line and another dotted line down here, and I've labeled that batting. So the batting is 10 inches square. So from the center to the top, I've got 5 inches. From the center down to the bottom here, I've got 5 inches. So 10 inches dotted line to dotted line. The backing fabric is 10.5. So I've got another line up here, label backing. The instructions are all in the document. So we have a placement line for our backing fabric. We've got our placement line for the batting, and we've got our line for the size of the design. Once you got everything marked up, you're actually going to cut on this line here. So this black square, you're going to cut that out using your rotary cutter. So you wind up with a piece of template plastic in your hoop that has a hole in it. So when you use this to quilt each of your blocks, you're going to place your backing fabric on the back of the hoop, on the back of the template plastic, so it's lined up with the backing placement line and centered using the vertical, because we can't get 10 inches out this way. On the top of the plastic, you're going to put your batting down so that it's centered using the placement line here and here. And then you're going to put the piece of your background fabric, which may or may not have an applique design on it. So you're going to get that centered over the batting. Tape it all down using Scotch Magic tape. And then you can go to the machine and stitch your quilting design. If you have an applique on here, for the Heart to Heart collection, there is a little bit of a alignment line so that you can fine tune the position of your quilting design, but you've essentially minimized the amount of waste, which I'm all for minimizing the amount of waste of fabric and batting. And you don't need a piece of stabilizer in there. So your finished thing is literally, apart from the applique shape, you've literally got your background fabric, you've got a piece of batting, and you've got your backing fabric. So you end up with a nice soft quilt, as soft as it would be if you had done free motion quilting or quilting it on a long arm machine. So that only really works for stitching up blocks that you want to quilt in the hoop, and then you're going to join them together with the sashing. Andrea, when you come to be quilting them, the practical joy blocks, you can also utilize the grid on that comes with your hoop. And if you don't have a hoop, you can always make a grid template from a piece of template plastic. You want to trace the inside of your hoop. This thing literally sits right inside the inner hoop. And the Benina hoops come with little clips on them. I've got it centered. So that sits right inside the hoop. You can use this to help you position the hoop to load the quilt into the machine. So if you were to take the design worksheet for the design, you have to excuse my printer. It doesn't like printing these days. So it's a bit of a mess, but I got the hoop center line on the quilting design. I can tape that to the back of my template, and then I can put this on the quilt so that the quilting design is exactly where it needs to go. And for any of the quilting designs that you can usually see, my printer is actually not printing very well at all, but you can usually see the various placement lines, so you can get those aligned with what they need to be aligned with on the quilt. So once you've got this on the quilt, you can tape it to the quilt and then put your inner hoop on top of it, so it's in place around the template. You can even use double-sided tape on the bottom of the inner part of your hoop to hold that. It will kind of stick it to the quilt. Then you wrap the quilt around the hoop, or the inner part of the hoop, lift it up, place it down into the outer part of the hoop. So that will help you get the quilt in the hoop reasonably accurately. Now, you're still more than likely going to need to do a little bit of fine-tuning to the positioning of the quilting design. And that's usually the part that people have the most trouble with. But once you've got the hang of it, it will go a lot faster. So bear in mind, the first couple of times that you try it, it might take a while, but as you get used to it, it will get easier and it will get faster. So I hope that has helped. I'm actually really glad that Ruth had asked about that, using the template plastic, because we more than likely will use that same technique for quilting the Awakened Heart quilt. It will save us on batting, it will save us on backing fabric, and it will allow us to do some quilting in the hoop, which is still nice and soft, because there won't be any stabilizer anywhere in the quilt sandwich except for underneath the applique shapes.